I've spent most of my life trying to understand one question: what are we really? I've studied manifestation, meditation, consciousness, intuition, hypnosis, you name it. But after all these years, one of the biggest things I've learned is actually incredibly simple. You are not the voice inside of your head. You are the one who is aware of that voice. And it took me almost my entire life to really understand what that meant. But I think my story actually starts when I was about 6 years old. Growing up, neither side of my family had a lot of extra money. Everybody worked, there wasn't a lot left over. And looking back, I actually think that made room for something really beautiful: creativity. My mom's mom was an artist. We spent summers drawing and painting with her, and at one point, she even had an art gallery. My dad's mom was very different. She had 9 kids, 6 boys, and 3 girls, and she was always cooking these huge meals and cleaning. I mean, deep cleaning. Every day. Everyone always said I was her favorite, and we were incredibly close. She even had this special nickname for me that nobody else called me, and maybe one day I'll tell you guys what it was. She taught me how to draw, but she also taught me these little things about life. And when I look back now, I think more than anything, I felt protected by her. And then she got sick. I was only 6, so I didn't understand what leukemia was. I didn't understand why her skin was turning yellow. I just knew the adults around me were upset and something wasn't right. Eventually, they sent her home on hospice. I remember my mom's mom taking us to see her. My brother went up to her first and held her hand, then my sister, and I was the last one. I walked over, took her hand, and I told her that I loved her. And almost immediately after I said it, she passed away. I didn't even understand what death was yet, but that moment stayed with me. And throughout my life, I've wondered, was she waiting to hear my voice? After she died, I missed her terribly. She had this favorite blue t-shirt with some kind of hand-painted image on it, and I started wearing it to bed every night because it still smelled like her. And somehow, when I wore it, I still felt close to her. And looking back now, I wonder if that period was when I really started becoming aware of something that I wouldn't have had words for at 6 years old: intuition. That sixth sense. By the time I was around 7, I started noticing things. I'd have a feeling the phone was going to ring. Sometimes I'd feel like I knew who was calling. I'd sense that somebody was going to come visit. At church, I could meet someone and just automatically sense if they were carrying something heavy emotionally. I was a really empathetic kid. I felt things. And eventually, I started realizing that not everybody seemed to experience the world quite the way I did. But being sensitive didn't always feel like a gift. Around that period of my childhood, I would have terrible episodes at night. I'd wake up absolutely panicked. My aunt and uncle would try to calm me down and get me back to sleep, but sometimes it was incredibly difficult because I was terrified. Looking back, I don't know exactly what was happening. I just remember feeling everything so intensely and not having language for it. So sometimes sensitivity just felt like fear. And there was a lot of uncertainty in my childhood. My mom had me when she was only 16. My dad was only 19. They were incredibly young. They weren't always able to be responsible in the ways we needed them to be. But I believe they did the best they could with where they were at the time. For several years, my brother, my sister, and I ended up being raised by my aunts and uncle. And being separated from my mom and dad was really hard for me. I think that's where I first learned what abandonment felt like. But strangely, it's also where I learned what hope felt like. Because even at 9 years old, I would imagine myself in a happier environment. I'd imagine what it would feel like to live the life I wanted. I didn't know anything about manifestation. I didn't know what visualization was. I just knew that somewhere inside me, I believed life could feel different. And because we moved and changed schools, I think my intuition became almost like an internal compass. I learned to pay attention. Who Who feels safe? Who doesn't? What's happening in this room? What am I feeling? Then around 13, something happened that finally gave me language for some of this. Every Wednesday after school, I started watching Sylvia Brown on the Montel Williams show. And listen, I wasn't some kid who automatically believed in psychics. I was skeptical. But something about Sylvia Brown's raspy little voice and those nails, she had me. I started reading her books and I became fascinated by her ideas about spirit guides, the other side, consciousness, and vibration. And something about it resonated with me. I had grown up in the Episcopal Church. I was an acolyte. I went through communion and Bible study, but I was also the one always asking questions. If something didn't make sense to me, I wanted to know why. I wasn't trying to reject spirituality. Actually, it was the opposite. My spirituality needed to make sense to me because I felt so connected to this thing inside me, this spirit, this awareness, whatever you want to call it, that I wanted to understand what it was. Sylvia Brown's books also introduced me to guided meditation. I remember visualizing white light coming into my body and negative energy leaving like smoke. That was really the beginning of meditating for me. And the more I meditated, the more aware I became. I started seeing people differently. I started seeing the world more energetically. Meditation didn't give me intuition. It taught me how to listen to it. And there was another truth I had been carrying with me inside myself since I was very young. I knew I was gay. I didn't necessarily have all the words for it as a kid, but inside I knew. And for years, I hid that part of myself. And when you're very young, you become aware of what's expected of you, who you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to act. And sometimes hiding feels safer than telling the truth. But by the time I was 18, I was tired of hiding who I truly was. I knew that if I ever wanted to live authentically, I was going to have to be brave enough to tell the truth. So at 18, I came out to my family. And pretty much everyone accepted me. I mean, there were a couple of people who initially didn't get it, but eventually they came around too. And looking back, I think that taught me one of my earliest lessons about alignment. Long before I used that word spiritually, I experienced what it felt like to stop fighting against something I already knew to be true within myself. Because sometimes intuition isn't knowing who's going to call. Sometimes it isn't sensing somebody else's energy. Sometimes it's that quiet knowing inside of you saying, this is who I am, and having the courage to honor it. I've learned something from that experience that I've carried with me ever since. Truth will carry you. It doesn't mean truth will always be comfortable. It doesn't mean that everybody will understand you immediately. But there's a freedom that comes when your outer life stops contradicting what you know to be true inside. And to me, that's alignment too. So then when I was 19, I discovered The Secret, and something about it resonated so strongly with me. I watched that documentary every single day. I'm not kidding. At one point, I practically had it memorized. The Secret introduced me to a basic version of the law of attraction, and I started experimenting with it. I tried little things, attracting a cup of coffee or imagining myself driving my aunt's brand new truck that she never let anybody else drive, and then suddenly she let me drive it. Were those coincidences? Maybe. But at 19, they fascinated me. More importantly, they made me start paying attention to my thoughts. And that's when I realized something uncomfortable. I was an incredibly negative thinker. My mind automatically imagined the worst case scenario. I had been carrying this fear since childhood without even realizing how much of my thinking was actually being shaped by it. So I dove in. I studied Abraham Hicks, Bob Proctor, Neville Goddard, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, Think and Grow Rich. I wanted to understand all of it. But knowing these teachings intellectually didn't mean I always knew how to live them. And life eventually taught me that lesson the hard way. When I was around 23 or 24, I was working full-time at Walmart, and I fell behind behind on my car payment. My car got possessed, so I had to take the city bus to work. A trip that would have been about a 30-minute drive took me 3 to 4 hours one way. Then after working all day, 3 to 4 hours back home. I was exhausted. And here's the part I can laugh at now. I'm sitting on this bus, listening to law of attraction teachings, hoping something is just going to magically appear and rescue me. And eventually I realized that is not how this works. You can visualize, you can meditate, you can work on your thoughts. You can get yourself into what I call alignment, but then you have to move. You have to make choices. You have to take action from that place. The life you want isn't always going to show up to your front door and ring the doorbell. That period taught me the power of choice. You don't have to live on default. You can start making decisions that point toward the person you're trying to become. And sometimes jobs change. Sometimes relationships change. Not because those people are bad, but because you're changing direction. Years later, my exploration of consciousness continued. Dolores Cannon's work really resonated with me. I experienced hypnosis and past life regression myself, and the experience brought forward lessons that were incredibly valuable to me. I became fascinated enough with the work that I eventually trained and became a level 2 QHHT hypnosis practitioner. Whether you believe in past lives or not, for me, it became another piece of this lifelong question. What are we beyond our thoughts, our bodies, and the stories we've been given about who we're supposed to be? And then I found Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul, and one idea shifted everything. I am not the voice inside my head. I'm the one who can hear it. Think about that. If you can hear your thoughts, who is listening? For years, I'd been trying to change the voice, make it more positive, make it manifest better things, stop it from imagining worst case scenarios, and suddenly I realized I don't have to believe everything it says. And then Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and A New Earth brought another piece into focus for me. All we ever actually have is this moment. Not yesterday, not the thing we're afraid might happen next Thursday, this. And when I'm truly present, that's when I feel most connected to myself. That's when I feel aligned. That's when I feel like I'm actually participating in life instead of constantly thinking about it. And eventually, I noticed something else. Almost every spiritual teacher I respected, despite their different philosophies, valued some form of meditation or stillness. And I understood why. Because I knew how it felt when I meditated. Connected, present, aligned with what I call my inner being. And that's one of the biggest reasons I decided to become a mindfulness meditation teacher. I wanted to understand this practice more deeply. And I wanted to help other people discover that place within themselves. Today, when I look backward, I don't see all these experiences as random, disconnected chapters anymore. I see a kid who couldn't control much of what was happening around him, so he discovered an inner world. At first, I went inward because I wanted to escape uncertainty. Eventually, I learned to go inward so I could be fully present for life. And today, I own a small business. I'm building another part of my life around mindfulness, one-on-one work, teaching, and creating videos like this. I'm still learning. I'm still becoming. I still get caught in my thought. I still experience fear, but now I know the way back. Awareness, presence, and paying attention to how I feel. One of the things that I've taken from Neville Goddard's Feeling is the Secret and Abraham Hicks' The Astonishing Power of Emotions is the importance of emotional awareness. I see my emotions as information. When I feel love, appreciation, joy, ease, those feelings tell me something about how connected I feel to who I really am. And when I experience fear, sadness, remorse, anger, or grief, I don't believe that means I failed spiritually. It means that there's something inside of me asking for my awareness. Because after spending most of my life searching for truth, this is what I've come to believe. We are more than the voice inside of our heads. We're awareness. We're connected. And whatever you believe about energy, manifestation, or spirituality, you can start somewhere incredibly simple. Notice. Notice what you're thinking. Notice what you're feeling. Notice this moment. And then ask yourself, what choice can I make from here that moves me toward the life I actually want? When I was 9 years old, I used to imagine what it would feel like to live a different life. I didn't know anything about manifestation. I didn't know anything about mindfulness. I didn't know the word alignment. I just knew that there had to be something more. And all these years later, I'm still discovering what that something more means. So if you're watching this because you're somewhere in your own spiritual journey and you feel lost, maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're becoming aware. And if you're exploring some of these same questions about mindfulness, manifestation, consciousness, and creating a life that feels aligned with who you really are, that's what this channel is about. So I'd love for you to come along with me because we're all still learning. We're all still becoming, and the only place we can ever begin is right here. For more stories and more connection, for mindfulness talks, free guided meditations, please like, share, and subscribe, and I would love to connect with you. Thank you.